Hello, my name's Paul Flowers. I'm the Chief Design and Brand Identity Officer of LIXIL.
I'm Paul Finch, Program Director of World Architecture Festival, and we're here in Miami for this year's event. So Paul, I was thinking back to when we first met and really the origins of World Architecture Festival. I was editing Architectural Review magazine, and we decided there ought to be a global event for architects where they were the main players rather than bit part players at sort of real estate events. And we got launched, slightly unhappily for us, 6 weeks after Lehman Brothers went bust, just as the financial crisis was taking over. So we had a wonderful first event in Barcelona. You guys were there right from the outset, but we didn't know if we would ever do anything ever again. And our owners, EMAP, decided that it was worth pursuing despite the financial crash. And happily for us, Grower kind of stepped up to become, you know, our main partner, which you've been ever since, for which we were extremely grateful. Grower's kind of financial strategy was to put clear blue water between yourselves and competitors through design, which I think has been done very successfully and probably explains our happy cooperation ever since.
It's turned into a marriage, I think, rather than a fleeting relationship. And I think during that period for us, of course, it's amazing for us because of the brand exposure. But one of the things that's developed, which has been incredible, is because we have such access to so many architects, that we get these incredible insights. And those insights have they've actually influenced the products that we've created over the years. Insights like, you know, we're sitting here today and we're launching a collaboration with Buster and Punch, and that really was born from a simple insight that architects find it incredibly difficult to specify all those elements in an environment and bring them together in a really cohesive way. So working with a brand like Buster and Punch, Grower Spa then can start to match their products one-to-one with the light fittings, the lighting, all of those elements, furniture handles. So architects can specify that very easily. And we're doing this with 4 different finishes. So, you know, we've got a lot to thank this collaboration, and I think it just gets better every year, I think.
When we first met, there was a sort of point of transition where a new chief executive at Grower in Dusseldorf decided that the design studio, instead of being based in the factory, sort of out of town, should be in the headquarters building in the middle of the city. And psychologically, that was a huge difference. We could see it was being matched by what you guys were doing. And I was thinking about this in relation to our conference theme this year, which is Hearts and Minds. In a way, the sort of mind bit of Grower, that's to say the rational calculation, manufacture, it is of course absolutely important. Without that, it's chaos. On the other hand, ideas of the influence of design and the appeal to users, which is where emotion and sensation come into the mix. I wonder if you guys think about that when you're thinking about your different clients, the specification clients, but also your retail, the general public as purchasers, how you balance that difference between, you know, the rational, the scientific, the efficient, and then the kind of, you know, warm, it's slightly difficult to define feelings.
So if you look at the bathroom itself, it's transitioned from a rational space for cleaning and grooming into this emotional space of well-being. And that's kind of been mirrored by our transition, like you say. So, you know, we have these pillars that grow: quality, design, technology, sustainability, and they're equally important. But what we realized is design we can use to actually guide the user intuitively through the process of use, not just the aesthetic. The aesthetic is incredibly important, but we can use design to really guide the users so they can interface in and get the most from the product, the intention. And I think that transition as a brand has meant that we're much more in tune with consumer needs. We understand the progression. We work with architects and designers. We gain all these insights because we want our products at the end of the day, like you say, to resonate on an emotional level. You know, people start their day and they end their day in this space, and it's the last room in the house where you have a lock on the door. And so it's quite a personal sanctuary. So there is this kind of emotional connection in this environment that we've kind of tapped into.
Because you do a sort of total design thing, don't you, where actually you're doing all the packaging and you're spending as much care about, well, how is this stuff delivered? How is it unloaded? What happens to that material that's left over, and so on and so forth? Do you do surveys of people? Do you do sort of big data things about what people are doing, or do you take small groups of individuals and interview them at length, or both?
No, that's really interesting. We have this thing, we've developed this thing, we owned a trademark called pre-search, because we used to do lots of research at the end of the process, like you say, comparative studies, but we don't do that anymore. We spend all of the time at the beginning, really understanding how are consumers using products, how are architects specifying products. We get all this information comes together, we do ethnographic research, and we also do very small qualitative research sessions with experts, industry experts. Our products take 2 to 5 years to produce, so we can't look at current things, current trends, we have to project and try to lead those trends. But what they do is they give us a much more holistic view. And following macro trends, we try to move in a way that society is moving and understand society. But at the end of the day, like you say, all of those elements are touch points for users. So we understand if we want to create a perfect experience, we have to look at every single touch point, from when they're researching and specifying products right to the end when they're installing the products. And then what happens at the end of the product lifetime? How do we take that back? How do we recycle that product? The whole thing we have to consider now.
This kind of futurology is tricky stuff, isn't it? Somebody made a remark yesterday at a session on neuroscience and architecture, that the brain essentially operates as a predictor. But I think that in your world, you're sort of tapping into the way that people might intuitively interpret or use a space as well as a product. Because what you sell are essentially products that could go into all sorts of spaces. I mean, small, medium, huge. But what about the space itself? I mean, to what extent do the products relate to kind of a spatial idea?
Yeah.
I'm talking about specification market now.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about spatial, it's quite interesting because we're sitting in a vignette right now, and that transition for us, we have to start to now think about how architects are specifying the space and how could our products become more integrated, and we call this architecture. So it's kind of our water products, the aqua, but then the architecture of the interior space, and that's why you start to see materials now that architects use on the wall coming into our products, like the Allure Gravity product behind me. You start to see in introducing those materials that are the same as the architecture, they really feel like they're infused. And then, like you say, because we're dealing with such a wide audience of users. Now, LIXIL Global Design, we design products for all of the LIXIL portfolio of brands, and that means 1 billion people, more than 1 billion people use our products every single day. That's 1 billion people we haven't met. So we have to try to anticipate through ergonomy, trend research, all of those things, what will those individuals need? As diverse as they are culturally, demographically, how can we start to create products and experiences that always feel like they've almost been tailored for that, the individual, but it's 1 billion of the individuals. So yeah, it's an arduous task.
As far as the specification market is concerned, you are in exactly the same position as the architects designing, a school or a hospital or whatever it may be. They have a kind of unwritten contract with people they've never met, that actually what they're going to provide them is not only going to be satisfactory the first time they experience it, but especially in the housing market, is going to be there, for 50 years or even longer. This is quite an unusual situation, isn't it? Because business is usually based on contracts and it's very obvious who's responsible to whom. And of course, that, in one sense, that is true of all building products. But in another sense, there's a sort of moral imperative on people doing something for strangers,
Yes.
which is going to make their life better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at LIXIL we say is a purpose-driven brand. So, and we say, making better homes a reality for everyone, everywhere. And that really means, we have Grow a Spa, really super premium brands, but that part of making better homes a reality for everyone, everywhere means we also have brands which are for the developing markets, for basic sanitation. So yeah, it's a really wide scope of portfolios, and there is a moral imperative. We want to do things, and like you said, that relationship is built with people who specify us that sometimes haven't met us and those things, but that's based on a reputation, and it's based on trust. And the industry we operate in, it's very much based on relationships.
Yeah.
You know, and the products, of course, have to function. They have to be amazing technology, but the relationships we have with our customers and architects and specifiers and plumbers, and that relationship is really important. That's built over decades of collaboration and trust through quality and things that last a long time and function again and again.
With all the research in all the countries and with a billion people using your products, do you find that people have more in common, that there's more that unites us than separates us, or do you see really very varied and very kind of siloed areas?
I think with water in particular, I think there are definitely cultural elements. You know, so if you think of like Japanese rituals, onsen, all those things about, you know, cleansing before you enter the bathtub, there are some particular things. But I think if I look globally, really, I think there are more things that unite people, how they want to, you know, they start their day in a shower, that's to rejuvenate, to wake up, and they end their day perhaps in a bath and to relax. They use those things in similar ways to evoke a human emotion, I guess. So I see more similarities than differences, to be honest.
Paul Flowers, thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul. Lovely to see you as always.